Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null. I'm going to share a special little essay today, and this is for all those in this audience who have accepted that love is so important in their life. And are they receiving it? Are they manifesting it? Do they understand it? There were two popular songs, one in the 1970s, Dionne Warwick was the performer, and it was Burt Bacharach, Hal David wrote the lyrics and the music. It was called What the World Needs Now is Love. I believe that. But then later, Tina Turner, based upon her own experiences and the abuses in her life and the lack of unconditional love, came out with a big hit, Love. All right? What's love got to do with it? It's nothing but a secondhand emotion. I would challenge that. I can understand it. I can appreciate it, especially for those who've tried to give love and got abuse in return. So today, let's just take a moment and maybe look at it from a little different perspective. I'm doing one essay per week. Last week I did 3, but this week 1. Also, I just noticed that nothing has been put up on my YouTube Gary Null channel for a while. I'm going to be putting a lot of essays, commentaries, investigative reports, health and nutrition classrooms on the air. But now to this. A world hungry for love. We live in an age that has never been richer in information, yet poorer in understanding. People can communicate instantly across continents, but struggle to connect across the table. We know the language of technology, but have forgotten the language of the heart. The paradox is everywhere. We have abundance without satisfaction, process without peace, and knowledge without wisdom. Beneath our daily pursuits runs a quiet ache. I call it the big empty. The feeling that something essential has been lost. That something is love. Not the sentimental, marked kind that fills our songs and screens, but the deeper force, the more authentic force that comes from the Spirit that gives life coherence, meaning, and direction. Love is not a luxury. It is oxygen for the soul, the organizing intelligence of nature itself. It is both the beginning and the destination of every human journey. How many times have I shared with you that my entire adult life as a senior research fellow and director of the Anti-Aging Institute at the Institute of Applied Biology was about seeing the power of energy in exchange, whether it was in food or supplements or water, or just loving the environment you're in and the animals in it, and treating them with dignity and respect. Those animals lived longer, didn't have the diseases. So this was proven over and over again. And we have an abundance of that knowledge now that it works for humans. Give love, and suddenly everything is possible. But when we speak about falling in love, we're describing a temporary crack in the armor of separation. For a moment, the walls drop and we glimpse reality as it truly is, a unified field of energy and consciousness. Bring those two together and you have something magical. The spiritual traditions of the world, though offering different languages and different ideas, have always pointed to the same truth. The Taoists call it harmony. The Buddhists call it compassion. The Christians, God. The scientists, coherence. But they're all describing the same flow. To love is to live in alignment with that flow. Love does not demand, it allows. Love does not possess, it honors. Love does not divide, it integrates. It is not blind, it sees clearly and still chooses connection. But then we have fear and separation. If love is unity, fear is division. Fear, which we're conditioned to believe is real, no matter what the underlying cause, tells us we are alone and must protect ourselves at all cost, no longer be vulnerable. It whispers that there is not enough time, money, security, affection, or worth. We live in a world of scarcity, or so we're taught to believe. Love denies all that. It is this belief of scarcity that turns nations against nations and hearts against hearts. Can you really hurt another person? Can you kill them? Can you condemn their children? Can you kill their children? Can you create starvation and famine, civil strife and suffering if you love the other? I think not. Every act of cruelty, greed, and deception has fear as its root. Fear is love forgotten. Our bodies even mirror this truth. When we feel safe and connected, the brain releases serotonin, oxytocin, and growth hormones, chemicals that strengthen the immune system and open the heart. When we're afraid, the stress hormones flood in, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. The heart constricts. The body prepares for battle or escape, for argument. We become less creative, less generous. We become less alive. It is impossible to live fully while living in fear. And yet right now in the United States and other countries, at least half of our population is motivated every day by fear, fear of loss, loss of control, the body politic, those in power who have been able to do whatever they've wanted without any thought. What is the consequence of what I'm about to do? What if we do a nation injustice by changing its democratically elected officials to ones that are obedient to our needs? Is that right? Does that come from fear? Or does that come from love? We couldn't do it if it were love, but we can do it if it's fear. Get others to fear the other. Get them to fear anything other than the single truth they're told. It's not a universal truth. It's not a spiritual truth. It's not a moral truth. No, it is a personalized, idealized, politicized, weaponized truth. Therefore, it is not. It is the opposite. But let's reflect for a moment. In moments of anxiety, ask yourself, what would love choose here? And then we have to look at the conditioning and the loss of innocence. Every child is born radiant, open, trusting, and full of curiosity. A baby does not know how to hate, judge, or compare. But slowly, through the conditioning of family and culture, love becomes distorted. We learn that affection must be earned, that approval is conditional. We hear no far more than yes. We're rewarded for performance, not presence. Many grow up believing that love is transactional, something to be won through obedience, charm, and success. Now imagine with robotics, with artificial intelligence, you never have to be concerned about receiving what you believe is love, true love. Never an argument, never a disagreement, never an arbitrary decision, never a mood. Everything is positive and obedient to its conditioning. So is that a real world? Is that real love? Is the robot sharing real love or pretense, an artifact? It was the great essayist F. Somerset Maugham who said, never allow the public behind this curtain because they will be angry at you, because it was the illusion that they loved. We're having a hard time separating out truth from non-truth because so many people who are sharing non-truths have joined a collective consciousness, the reporters for a respected newspaper, all the people that own the media, the very same people who have no problem taking your loving, adorable child and then conditioning you to believe that the child should be fed chemicals that end up harming the child, causing now a whole generation to less likely live longer than their parents. Since when is that a good thing? Since when could all the people working in that corporation, CBS, NBC, Fox, all the radio and television programs, feeding us propaganda and calling it the truth? Could they go home and say, I love my dog, and I don't want that dog to be harmed? That dog and I have a bond. Well, could you say the same thing about the chicken? Because I can show you chickens that share the same bond of love. The cow, the calf. No, we're very monotheistic. We want one single truth and nothing else can compete with it. So everything we're taught, we're also conditioned to trust. And trust is the bond that holds everything together. A father who received hard love and abuse may pass it on to his children, believing he is strengthening them. He is not. A mother who was taught that emotion is weakness may withhold warmth, thinking she is preparing her child for real life. She is not. Each generation inherits the unhealed wounds of the one before, and every generation has a lot of unhealed wounds. But today there's something unique. We are self-inflicting wounds upon our psyche. You cannot be a physical hoarder before you first have cluttered the mind with so much information, so much confusion and contradiction that you can't even see clearly anything. And yet you still trust the people that put all that into your mind. But love was never gone. It is only recovered. So how do we rediscover the source? Healing begins by remembering beneath every defense, every wound, every lapse of awareness, every false identity, the current of love still flows. The work of life is not to create love, but to remove the obstacles to its expression. This remembering is both spiritual and physiological. The heart literally generates electromagnetic fields measurable several feet from the body. When we think loving thoughts, that field expands and synchronizes with others. When we harbor anger, resentment, greed, jealousy, envy, it contracts. You know how you feel when you're in the presence of someone that is joyful, happy, loving, caring, nurturing. And you know how you feel when you're in the presence of someone who is angry all the time, bitter, rageful, without any thought that the energy they're exchanging is one that can cause you to lose a sense of balance and harmony and love in your own life. We are transmitters of the frequency we call love. To rediscover it, we must first quiet the noise of fear. A few simple steps, and I'm including these now in all of my essays. Sit in stillness and breathe through the heart. So every time you breathe deeply, you're thinking about what can replace my insecurity, my uncertainty, my resistance? Love. As love bathes every cell in your body, anger, a discontent flows out. The heart begins to radiate, and you feel it. Others around you feel it too. Spend time in nature. Let the rhythm of life reset your own. Speak truthfully even when it trembles. Perform one act of kindness each day without seeking recognition. Now, these small practices rewire the nervous system for connection. They teach the body that it is safe to be open, vulnerable, fluid, flexible, creative, dynamic, caring, nurturing, and having a sense that life was meant to be lived, not just figured out. My life is not defined by what science can prove about it, because science has never proven where the life energy that I'm born with and still die with comes from. So it is not the arbiter of my fate. I am. These small practices will help you. Love in the body. Science now affirms what wisdom has always taught us. Love heals. Studies show that compassion strengthens immunity, accelerates recovery, even stimulates the brain to grow new cells. When we extend empathy to others, our own physiology transforms. The giver and receiver both flourish. Many times on this program, I've given an example of how, even if I have no money on me, I will always stop with a homeless person and say, friend, tell me your story. How did you get here? And they're surprised because no one ever asked them that. No one cares. They'll send them a quarter, $1, and walk on to assuage their guilt rather than caring about the person they just gave it to. I want to be in that person's mind long enough to understand what is absent, what is missing, beyond a safe place to live, food, clothing, whatever he might need or she might need. But once a person tells you their story, then you begin to be able to give some insight, how they might be able to better survive. If you have some money, if I see a cold day and a person without a coat, I'm going to stop and share that. I'll buy him a coat. I'll give him my coat. I've got another coat. We are never less for giving more, and you're never more for giving less. It should be unconditional. It should be one-on-one, not writing a check to a charity that's going to probably not use that money very effectively, but where you can actually see in a person's eyes, then you start feeling that heart energy. That's love. Even if the person cannot appreciate what you're doing, and they don't always, even if no one says thank you, that's not the reason you do it. You do it to honor your spirituality every day. Because as we do something good for other people, so too are we doing something good for ourselves. We're honoring not to compromise when it comes to our capacity, whatever it may be, whatever limited capacity I may have. I'm going to still share that with another who is in greater need. That's what happens when we're not afraid. Science now affirms that wisdom has always taught that love heals. Studies show that compassion strengthens all of this and literally can transform us, where we can flourish. It was Dr. Bruce Lipton, a wonderful research cellular biologist, who revealed that cells exposed to nurturing environments thrive, while those in toxic surroundings wither. Humans are no different. Think of the job, the commute we don't like, but it's a sacrifice we have to make. The work environment that is toxic. The individuals within that who may be alpha male and females who don't care that we should have an opinion about anything. You're there to be paid and do as you're told. Think of the stress of being in a highly competitive environment like Wall Street, a jungle filled with very bright people who sacrifice so much of joy and love and happiness to focus 100% on achieving something that would identify them to make them more relevant than if they didn't achieve it, or more superior in that moment to other people, or so we're led to believe. They all burn out and they lose their sense of compassion because they've lost their sense of respect for self. In effect, their self-loathing. If only I'd worked harder, got the big bonus. If only I had spent more of my nights at the office instead of at home with friends, family, and pets. But then they don't. Because no two energies can share the same space with equal intensity, to the degree that a negative energy of the opportunist, the overachiever, you're automatically living out of balance. So that collapses everything else. So you may have experienced, may desire to experience, but no longer can. You collapse it. Only one energy can dominate at a time, negative or positive, constructive or destructive, healthy and healing or diseasing, kind or not. Which do you choose? Love can make that happen. So love tells the body, you're safe, grow, heal. Fear says, you're threatened, defend, turn all of your autonomy and freedom of choice over to so-called experts. But reward them for their effort, not the results. Because if we rewarded all the people who tell us they're so important in our lives, they're the experts, we're not, we would be spending very little money and have very little positive thoughts for those who took our money, took our trust, kept us in fear, gave us some measure of hope if we stayed with their therapies. Well, then why shouldn't all the people who tried the cancer therapies, nothing else, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars? Why aren't they given a refund? Why do we reward the people and make them feel good about themselves when they failed? The oncologists, the cardiologists, the neurologists, the pediatricians in particular. We have a nation. Look at our children. Look at their health. The unhealthiest children in any country in the developed world. Any irony? No irony. No introspection. No change. That's the dominance of people who fear losing power and control. So they can only share one truth, which is a full lie. Love finds its most challenging and transformative classroom in relationships. When two people open their lives to each other, they create a third entity, the relationship itself, which requires care and nourishment and honesty. Relationships reveal the truth about who we are. A person may say, I love you, you're wonderful, you're so important in my life. And the other person trusts that and believes that. Then the person does just the opposite. They go their own way. What about what you said? What about what you promised? Anything to keep on my journey. People are just there to be used. Really? Yeah. What about the phenomenon in the last several years of a date for dinner, pretending you care about a person, want to meet them, and you're just there to have a free meal? I interviewed several of these people to do a segment for my program. Some of these people are so clever, they have 6 months worth of dates every night of the week where they start early. So then after they have a meal, and generally at a very high-end restaurant that someone else pays for it, they're off doing what they wanted to do, leaving someone believing, gee, that didn't feel right. How many times have we entered relationships because we were not willing to take the time and discipline and determination to overcome our own weak and frail and painful sense of non-identity? We know what we do. We've mastered our careers. We've mastered our identity, but we don't know who we are because we're living through other people's expectations, getting permission without thinking maybe this is a choice I should make on my own. As a result, we become a part of the group think, the consensus of psychotic behavior. We see it every day now. When the nations never do wells, and that's unfortunate because they could experience unconditional love. Therefore, they wouldn't say, let's go in and walk out with this poor little shopkeeper's inventory. Let's put him into bankruptcy. That's not love. That's the perverted side of having no sense of appreciation of how dynamic the human spirit can be, because they have not experienced that. All talk and no trust. It is the courage to remain open in the face of misunderstanding. Healthy loves look like listening to understand rather than to win. It is the person that is able to listen unconditionally and non-judgmentally. Go to neutral and then ask a person, let's see if I understand what you're saying. You've just talked about something. I don't want to misinterpret it. I don't want to filter out your truth. So is this correct? And then repeat back to them. Person, no, that's not what I said. Or yes, you got it. Then that's the power of patience, being quiet, not talking over people. Learn their truth, not just try to project your own. That takes patience. So when you go into a classroom, do you try to overtalk the teacher, argue with the teacher? Or do you try to listen to what the teacher is saying and then see if it makes sense, if it's backed up by supporting evidence? If you really want to change, you have to surrender arrogance, fear, and ego, because they block and distort everything. Speaking with honesty rather than manipulation. Last week, I wrote an essay, got a huge amount of response from it, and I'm going to post it on YouTube today. And it was about, what if you had to be honest about everything? No lying, but also no anger. You can have passion, but be honest. Who would want to remain in your life if they knew that whatever you saw or asked, you're just going to say what you believe was true? Think how many doors would open and how many doors would close if people began to say, well, kind of uncomfortable being around you because you're not willing to give me some comforting lies. And what is the ultimate outcome of taking a shortcut from the truth by giving you a lie to make you feel good in this moment? So speak honestly, respecting boundaries while remaining available, seeking growth instead of perfection, Always beware of the perfectionist, the one who's hypercritical of everyone else but never themselves, because you see the game. If they can make you feel bad about yourself to where you're actually self-loathing, then they can come in and say, I'm the example, look at me. Those are the cult leaders. Those are the politicians. Those are the evangelicals in every religion who deem that you're not wise enough, intuitive enough, spiritual enough to seek a higher moral equilibrium to life. You have to have an interpreter, an ambassador to that other state. No, you don't. In fact, it's generally to your disadvantage to expect someone else to tell you what is moral and immoral without finding for yourself. Every argument offers a choice: defend your ego or nurture the bond that the argument was predicated upon. This path of love always chooses the latter. At the basis of every journey, we must have the courage to be vulnerable to follow that path. We can talk it, do we walk it? I spent 2 weeks recently with some wonderful human beings who came, hopefully, to get healthier, to live a longer life. But what I saw was missing was not their vitamin supplements or how much of a particular protein, animal or plant they ate, but rather having absolutely no concept of what they should do with their life at this moment because of all the things that are changing, not based upon love. None of it is based upon love or help. It's all based upon taking full and complete power of every aspect of our lives, from digital currencies to IDs, where you can't go into a store of what was one of the new cities that are being built. Started in Great Britain, started in a small community, and now they've been perfected all over the world. Where if you're going to live there, 100% of your time is spent in that environment, 15-minute cities, 20-minute cities. So anything you need in a day is within 15 to 20 minutes. But everything is monitored. Everything. Everything in your body is monitored. And now they have technology that I just announced last week that can read your thoughts and then redirect those emotions. Wow. We thought that'd be years from now. It's now. So imagine someone's coming in and saying, we don't like your thoughts. You had some thoughts, and we're going to have to deprogram those thoughts. They're not acceptable. They're already doing it with credit scores. They're doing it by buying information that you had up on the internet that you thought was private. They have all your phone calls recorded. So where is love in this equation? It does not exist for them. It is a secondhand emotion, right? Think of the world where the people running it are completely fearful of what they consider an existential threat to their existence. Love, because they wouldn't be doing all this if they came from love. But our culture equates vulnerability with weakness. Opening the heart can feel dangerous. Yet vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy. Without it, love cannot breathe. To say I love you is to expose the tenderest part of oneself. It is to stand without armor in a world that often rewards cynicism. But strength is not in the mirror, reflecting back on a body of armor. No. It is the willingness to take it all off, to stand as you are, with no fear that somehow you're not able to share or receive love. Men especially have been conditioned to hide emotion. They're told that real men don't cry, that sensitivity is shameful. Yet the science of tears tells another story. Emotional tears contain stress hormones. Crying literally releases tension from the body. To weep is to cleanse, to heal, to make room for a new life. A person who can laugh deeply, weep openly, and forgive freely is not fragile. They are whole. But then you have the power of compassion or empathy. Compassion can be limited to, I feel for your pain. Empathy is, what can we do about it? Can I help you in some way? My mother told me long ago, when I was about 10 years old, and we were talking about an issue, she said, If you have to ask a person to do the right thing, they're the wrong person. I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't terribly bright. Today, with a career of helping tens of thousands of people, reaching tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people through the PBS specials and NPR and 48 Years on Pacifica and all the best-selling books and articles. One article alone, just one article alone, and I did this for 27 years with General Media, with cover stories, reached millions of people per article. So when you think, well, gee whiz, no one's paying attention, it's not true. It's not true. We have no idea how our empathy, compassion, our desire to share what limited assets we may have as a human being, whether intellectual or emotional, but it's what we have. We don't all bring the same life lessons into every encounter. Some are stronger, some are not. Some are more experienced, some are less. But if you're bringing it with the intent to help another, then you've equalized everything else. So never think that a gesture of kindness, of openness, of bearing witness has no meaning. It does for the people who are there. For the other people, hopefully people play it forward. So compassion is love in action, as is empathy. It begins when we recognize ourselves and others' suffering. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separation by expanding our circle of care. Suddenly, that we're walking by someone who is homeless and suffering. By having empathy, we're going to try to help them. Suddenly, they're in our circle and we're in their circle. I told you the story, I've said it a couple of times. A group of my friends, we go out for dinner and then go to a play once a week. After all, what's the purpose of having friends if you can't enjoy them? I don't want to be one of those people who say, has it been a year? Oh my goodness, let's have lunch. No, that's what they say in Hollywood. No, if you have friends and you're blessed to have friends that trust you, have your back, then bring them into your life. They have to be an integral part of the balance of life, where you make time for your career, your hobbies, your friends, the loved ones in your life, and your own health. You make room for all this, reading, continuing to grow and study, to learn, a lifelong student of life. Then you're living in balance and there's harmony. So we were walking, it was a cold day, it was in February, and as I looked off to the side on Broadway at around 60th Street, I saw a guy, young looking guy in his 20s, 30s, curled up, no coat. And we were all have coats. We were walking, warm. So I said, fellas, let's go over. So I talked to him for a few moments, asked him, how long had he been outside here? He said, 2 days. What happened to your coat? Some guys took it. And he said, that's what goes on the streets. So I said, so you're cold and you're probably hungry. He said, yeah. When was the last time you ate? 2 days ago. Good news, I said. You're not going to, today, there's going to be an input by all of us, and because you're a human being and you deserve help. So I said, fellas, someone want to give him the coat? No one said anything. In fact, they just walked on, 5 of them. So I gave him my coat. My buddy gave him gloves. I said, now let's go and get you some food. Took him up to the health food store I own at 89th and Broadway. And said, eat anything you want. Took it back in the office. He was very grateful. No one had ever done that. Why? With millions of people, and you see the suffering, then how are they manifesting love if they can't find love for those who need it most? Hard question to answer. If you're a person that, well, I wrote a check, to some charity that's supposed to help. No, that's an excuse. Tell a fool that. Don't tell someone who's lived a real life. Then we found him a place to live in, a single room occupancy hotel, paid for a month, gave him some ideas how to get out of where he was. And it was a bad relationship that his brother said, don't go in this relationship. She's just after you. The money, don't. And he didn't listen. He did. He lost everything. Now he was embarrassed, so he didn't want to go home. So in effect, he was going through his own process of punishing himself. 30 days later, I find an envelope, and it says, here's the money for your coat. I approximated what it would have been, the gloves, the food, and the month's rent. He said, I'm back on my feet. I've regained my life. Right? Stop for a moment and ask, would you have walked on, or would you stop? Even to bear witness, if nothing else. If everyone cared for someone else who was in need, we would have no one in need. We would have no homelessness. We'd have no wars. We'd have no crime. We wouldn't have corrupt politicians allowing people to commit crime without thinking of the victim. And that's a whole part of our society. So if you're going along with that, then redefine what love means to you, because that's not love. Every act of genuine kindness, every time we listen, comfort, or forgive, creates ripples that extend far beyond what we see. In fact, neuroscience shows that compassion activates areas of the brain linked with joy and creativity. It reprograms us from survival to connection. Compassion also has the power to transform society. Just imagine political systems guided not by profit, but by empathy, schools that teach cooperation instead of competition, economies that measure success by well-being rather than by consumption. These are not utopian fantasies. They are what love looks like at scale. So let's reflect for a moment. What is compassion where our default mode instead is our emergency response? That brings us to the world without love. The absence of love is visible everywhere, in the hunger of children, the isolation of elders, in the wars waged over imagined differences, in apartheid regimes that beat themselves on the chest with pride that they are the victims, and they're not. A nation that values wealth more than the wisdom breeds poverty of the soul. An economy that rewards greed creates emotional bankruptcy. The teachers, the healers, the quiet givers of the world remind us of what is possible. When a teacher buys breakfast for a hungry child, and by the way, very common. When a neighbor checks on another after a storm, and by the way, several years ago, we saw this. About 8 years ago, it was a huge storm. And it was unique because it was very slow moving. And when it got over Houston, kind of stopped. Over 21 trillion gallons of water poured down. And Houston has a lot of clay, so there's no place for the water to drain. It had been capped. All those oil refineries, all those toxic materials got into the water. And you had all these skyscrapers that if they had their generators on the roof, they still had power. They had food, water, no problem. They looked down. Who helped the hundreds of thousands of people who lived in just regular homes? Just average people. People who were called rednecks, good old boys. They came out, risked their own lives because they knew that water was toxic. And they took the boats up. So before you think because you live in Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or Washington, D.C., somehow you're entitled to your ignorance, there's a consequence when you lose capacity to appreciate who really built America, who really allows this country to have a heart. It is the working class, not you, not Elon Musk, not the rich, not the powerful, not Bloomberg, none of these people, because I haven't seen any of them take a rowboat or a truck out to rescue people. They have other people to do that. Without love, we become clever animals, efficient, ambitious, but lost. With love, we remember why we were here. Let's speak for a moment about unconditional love. Unconditional love is not sentimental approval or passive acceptance. It is fierce, it's grounded, it's wise. It sees through illusion but does not condemn. It allows freedom without abandoning truth. To love unconditionally means to stop measuring your worth, to see another as a soul in process rather than a project to fix or to exploit. It means to release the need to control outcomes, to trust the intelligence of life itself. And yet one of the largest industries today is buying up people's homes so they can't afford them anymore, and then charging outrageous rents for people who frequently cannot afford it. Or causing people to go into debt from credit cards where they're charging, when they miss a payment, 36% interest. And then exploiting those people who have nothing. If there's one drop of juice left in that person, they want to squeeze it out. And yet these are the people that surround the presidents, every president, the most greedy, sociopathic personalities who couldn't spell the word love, let alone bring it into their lives, because it would implicate the true nature of their insecurity, the need to exploit those who have been grossly exploited. Wow. But that's who they are, and they're rewarded. The opposite of unconditional love is egoic love. I love you as long as you love me. Egoic love bargains. Real love blesses. Living from love. Love is not a mood to wait for. It is a muscle to develop. We strengthen it through daily choice, choosing patience over reaction, empathy over judgment, generosity over grasping. Each morning, we can ask, will I create fear today or love? To live in love does not mean to avoid pain. It means to meet pain with awareness rather than resistance. Pain breaks open the walls that fear built. Many of life's greatest awakenings come disguised as heartbreak. Love is work. It requires attention, discipline, and humility. But it also rewards beyond measure. When we act from love, we are aligned with the creative force of the universe itself. I interviewed Jimmy Carter. I interviewed Ronald Reagan. I did an article on both. I was not impressed with Jimmy Carter's presidency, but I was certainly impressed by what he and his wife did with Habitat for Humanity, spending the rest of his life working on behalf of those who had so little and building them homes. That's unconditional love at its finest. So we need tools for living in love. Here are some just practical ways that we can start if we're just starting this real journey for the first time. Begin each day with intention. Before rising, breathe deeply and affirm, today I choose love over fear. That single thought changes your physiology and sets the tone for the day. Next, practice active appreciation. Notice what is right before fixing what is wrong. Gratitude shifts the brain's chemistry towards optimism. If you've listened to this show, watched this show for any period of time, then you know that when someone calls in, I don't say, you're wrong. I always try to see what is right in what they've said, and then mesh my thoughts with theirs. Let's see if we can expand on that, I'll say. That's an interesting thought. Let's see what we can add. That way a person doesn't fear being put down. And yet in our society, being put down, a gotcha moment becomes more important than relating in a meaningful way. Slow down. Until 3 years ago, I had an apartment my entire adult life in New York City. Then the irony of it is, this is irony, a person who had years before contacted me and says, in fact, knocked on my apartment door. Oh, my husband's got, and then went into a terminal illness. Is there anything that can be done? So I worked with that person for a month. When they went home, they had no disease in their body. That was the person that, when I was away, contacted my landlord and purchased my apartment. I was a renter, good renter. And I thought, wow, and that's how you say thank you? But in that kind of alpha mind that ran a major Fortune 500 corporation, you take no prisoners. You show no empathy. You show the brutal need to suppress, repress, control at all costs. You show no vulnerability. And we see this everywhere. I was no exception. But I simply let it go. Now I'm in a very quiet place. When I was in New York, I'd be working 20-hour days. Between my science work for 36 years at the Institute, my teaching at night, teaching at Fairleigh Dickinson University and Pratt Institute, counseling people, doing my Mastering Life series for over 20 years, counseling people one-on-one every day, writing books, articles, producing, writing, directing documentaries, enjoying my friends every week, doing dance parties, training over 90,000 people, came to the park over 50 years to the marathon, a very busy life. And I was very happy with that. I just wish there was more time in a day. Now, I work with rescued animals, bringing back to health and life and trust with love, and it works. So yes, at different times in life, we're going to come to an inflection point where we have to say, I really enjoyed this passage. There were moments I didn't, but by and large, it was wonderful. But now that's behind me. I'm going to take a new journey. I have to prepare for it. I have to get the tools I need. But I'm going to do this based upon the love of life and not allowing a day to be wasted. I've seen so many people in the last 2 years at my lectures. And by the way, for the 4,400 of you who came up to Kingston when I was up there honoring Gerald Celente with his conference for the day, some of you drove 4 hours up, and that whole day spent traveling to be there for us. I really appreciated that. That was on 3 separate occasions in the last 3 years. Then when I went back up to the New Life Expo, packed. I had to do a second lecture on the Sunday night. So many people. And then the premiere, the Ethical Culture Center, packed. Wow. The energy was so positive. The love was, it was just, it's as if the entire stage was filled with emojis. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate having that close proximity that I used to have every day. And now I have it through this stream. And I saw it, I felt it. But I'm also seeing something, especially in the older people, a sense of apathy. A person came up to me at my on Long Island, because the Friday I did the lecture in the premiere, the corruption of science in Manhattan. Then I went out to Huntington Arts Cinema, where I have premiered about 28 films over the years. And afterwards, a mob, people came up. They want to spend time. It's fine. And a woman says, here's a picture. I look at the picture, and here's this smiling, very tall woman, like 6'1", and athletic. And there we were down at the Healing Springs Ranch in 1995, and a bunch of us were running together in a pasture. Oh, it's just beautiful. And she said, I keep this with me to remind me what I once was. And I looked at her and I said, and how do you see yourself today? And her voice changed. And she said, I'm sad. Why? Well, all the things that I valued at that time, I was in my 30s then, early 30s, I thought would never end. And part of you was a part of my life and a lot of other people's lives. You would hold the running club where we socialized and ran and did marathons, major achievements in our lives. You'd do the dance parties where we could come, all ages would be out there, from teenagers with their family to older people. Everyone was dancing, having a great time. The cover dish dinners, the going to Broadway shows together, which I used to take my audience to the shows together. She said, I don't think you realize how many of us lived through you, because It was so much joy. And it was high level living at the spiritual level. She said, and now I don't have any of that. Had my relationship, had my marriage, my children are grown and gone. And she said, so now I'm a senior citizen and I don't know what's in front of me and I'm afraid. Well, I said, I can appreciate that. And I'm going to do a series of essays, one per week over the next year. For example, this one today. I've done 3 last week. I'm doing this one this week on love. Maybe these will reinstigate the process of saying, I don't have to sit here and wait to die over the next 20 or 30 years. No, I'm going to be vital again. I'm going to be that person again. Different circumstances, different people, but there's no law that says I have to act old. Never act your age. And by the way, which age are you? Chronological age or biological age? They're completely different. So we have to start journeys. We can say goodbye to a journey, appreciate its lessons, then take all that into a new inflection point where we're growing in a different way. We don't have to be lonely. There's an abundance of people to be friends with, have relationships with, but I'm sure today it's going to be different because of all the lessons you've learned of what works and what doesn't work, right? So slow it down, communicate with presence, put down your devices, look into their eyes, listen not to reply, but to understand. Forgive quickly. Forgiveness does not excuse behavior. It releases your bondage to it. It returns your energy to love. Serve without agenda. Give time, attention, or kindness without seeking recognition. Love multiplies when shared freely. Reconnect with nature. The natural world vibrates with harmony. A walk in the woods, the sound of running water, the warmth of sunlight, all recalibrate the nervous system. Meditate on the heart. Visualize light radiating from your chest. Let it expand to fill the room and the neighborhood and the world. So let's just take a moment to reflect as we come to the end of this essay. When was the last time I chose fear over love? What does love feel like in my body? Light, openness, ease? Who in my life needs forgiveness? And can I begin by forgiving myself? How would I speak and move and decide if I remembered that love is who I am? Write these reflections often. They are not questions to answer once, but doors to revisit again and again. Remember, love is the universal law. Love is not merely human, it is cosmic. Every atom in the universe dances in relationship to every other. The stars hold together by attraction. Galaxies spin in communion. Life itself is a symphony of cooperation. The mystics, the poets, the scientists are all describing the same truth from different angles. Reality is relationship, separation is illusion. So when everyone is invited to my table, and everyone, I don't care what your ethnicity or your age or your body politic or sexual identity, that's your business. But if you're a human being who want to share company, then you're invited to this table. Now you may say no, but there's no one excluded. Our behavior excludes us. Because part of the guilt and shame of someone who is not living an authentic life is they don't want to be reminded of what they're missing by being around people who are fully engaged. So to close, let's look at the eternal force. Can love die? No more than energy can vanish. It only changes form. A love that seems lost has simply shifted shape. In memory, into gratitude, into the subtle guidance of the unseen. Every act of love adds to the collective field of healing on this planet. No gesture of kindness is ever wasted. Our task is not to manufacture love, but to remember that we are made of it. The heart's true intelligence knows this, even when the mind forgets. The more we love, the more we see that there is nothing outside of love. A call to live as love. We are at crossroads as a species. Fear has had its centuries, its wars, its greed, its domination, its division. It has exhausted itself, and we in the process. The next evolution is not technological, but emotional. There's a time when we must stop trying to influence the mind and touch the heart, because as the heart believes, the mind will follow. If we just use science to combat science, we have missed the meaning of the effort altogether. They will always have more scientists, more control over the media, more control over the platforms, the capacity to destroy careers, but they can't destroy love. So don't make the effort all about them. Don't play in their game. We'll see what happens from that. Each person who lives from love contributes to that awakening. Each act of kindness is a vote for a new world. The invitation is simple yet profound. Choose connection over control. Choose curiosity over judgment. Choose generosity over competition, and choose truth over content. Love is not naive. It is revolutionary. It is the only power that can heal both the individual and the collective wound. Love is the great teacher, the invisible companion, the pulse within every breath. It asks us to look again, to see the sacred in the ordinary, to forgive what we thought unforgivable, to keep the heart open even when it trembles. The journey of love is not about becoming something new, but about remembering what we already are, expressions of the same divine source, radiant and whole. When we choose love again and again, in small ways and great ways, we become the living proof that another world is possible. Love is the antidote to fear. Love is the foundation of healing. Love is the essence of all life. That is my essay for today. This will be published on GaryNull.com and on PRN.live. If you find that anything is of value in this, please share it with others. I have no public relations firm, never have. I don't talk about myself, but I share messages. Hopefully, you'll find some meaning in this.